Stop everything, close your eyes for 5 seconds. Now, think about your plans for this evening. What just happened inside your head? Did you hear a distinct verbal sentence, as if a narrator was speaking a line of a script? Or was there just a wave of pure silent awareness, a conceptual knowing without any words at all? Open your eyes. You have just identified which side you're on in a silent, invisible war. For decades, you have assumed that every human brain processes thought in the exact same way. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding. The shocking truth is that humanity is neurologically split into two distinct tribes, the thinkers with a constant internal monologue and the thinkers with a completely silent mind. This is not a personality quirk, it is a fundamental difference in your cognitive architecture. And it is the hidden reason for the massive performance gap between individuals in high-pressure situations. In this video, we will finally bring this internal war out into the open. You have been endlessly gaslit by a society that has normalized only one specific style of human consciousness. If you're a person with a constant internal narrator, you have been taught that this is the very definition of deep, intelligent thought. You secretly believe that your ability to endlessly debate yourself, to rehearse future conversations, and to verbally analyze every past mistake is a sign of your superior intellect. If you're a person with a completely silent mind, you have likely spent your entire life feeling secretly broken. You hear others describe their inner voice, and you feel a profound sense of alienation, a quiet fear that you might be shallow, unintelligent, or somehow lacking a soul. Wrong. Both of these assumptions are profoundly, catastrophically incorrect. What modern psychology has carelessly labeled as a simple personality difference, neuroscience brutally classifies as two entirely separate cognitive operating systems. Let me completely dismantle this dangerous illusion for you right now. The presence or absence of an internal monologue has absolutely zero correlation with your intelligence, your creativity, or your capacity for deep emotional feeling. It is simply a structural byproduct of how your brain learned to process abstract information during its formative years. For the loud minds, your brain literally hijacked the auditory processing centers to create a constant radio broadcast of your own thoughts. For the silent minds, your brain bypassed the linguistic circuits entirely, choosing to process concepts in a more raw, nonverbal, and arguably more ancient format. One system is not better than the other. They are just different. But here's the terrifying truth society refuses to acknowledge. While both operating systems are equally valid in times of peace, one of them suffers from a catastrophic, life-threatening system failure under extreme pressure. You have been drowning in a sea of silent confusion, either annoyed by the constant noise in your head or terrified by the deafening silence, when the truth is that your specific cognitive architecture holds a hidden, brutal advantage in the chaos of a real crisis. The experts told you to embrace your inner voice or to practice journaling to develop one. But forcing your brain to adopt a cognitive style that is not native to its hardware is utterly futile. You do not need to change your fundamental programming. You simply need to understand the hidden strengths and fatal weaknesses of the system you were born with. We must immediately drop these useless behavioral theories. The silent war between these two cognitive tribes is not a philosophical concept. It is a tangible physical difference in the electrical wiring of your brain. The behavioral advice officially ends right here. Now, we must forcefully enter the microscopic laboratory of your own anatomy to witness the horrifying architectural divergence happening right now. Forget your personality traits, erase your psychological insecurities. We are plunging directly into the electrical architecture of your cerebral cortex. Look at the complex neural pathways. Millisecond 0. A high-stakes crisis suddenly occurs, an urgent alarm blares, a car aggressively swerves into your lane. For the loud mind, a catastrophic neurological delay instantly begins. The threat signal hits the visual cortex, but instead of triggering an immediate physical reaction, the data is forcefully rerouted. It travels to Wernicke area and Broca area. The brain desperately attempts to translate pure sensory data into a human language format. Millisecond 12. The auditory cortex lights up. A full verbal sentence is actively constructed in the mind. The internal voice screams a panicked command. Millisecond 50. This complex translation process creates a massive lethal cognitive bottleneck. The system is violently buffering. By second 2, the loud mind is completely paralyzed, trapped in an endless loop of internal narration, while the physical crisis rapidly unfolds around it. The narrator is talking endlessly, but the physical body remains entirely frozen. Now, look directly at the silent mind. Millisecond 0. The exact same terrifying threat appears. The visual signal is captured. Millisecond 12. The data entirely bypasses the slow, clunky language centers of the brain. There's absolutely no internal translation. There is no verbal warning. Millisecond 50. The pure conceptual data is transmitted instantly to the motor cortex for execution. The physical reaction is immediate, flawless, and completely silent. Society casually calls the loud mind thoughtful and the silent mind empty. Science calls this a brutal lesson in system latency. The silent mind is not missing a soul. It is operating a highly efficient, direct processing network. The loud mind is not inherently smarter. It is suffering from severe linguistic friction. The crushing hesitation you feel under extreme pressure is the actual mechanical weight of your brain trying to talk to itself before it acts. To prevent a complete systemic collapse of your processing speed, your nervous system must somehow bypass the internal radio. You cannot outthink this. You cannot negotiate with a slow auditory circuit. You cannot override the brutal laws of computational latency with a deep breath. Look at this scan. The language centers of the loud mind are burning a furious, toxic red, while the body remains utterly motionless. Your biology is operating perfectly based on its specific architectural design. You're entirely innocent of this mechanical bottleneck. But this aggressive, deep-seated structural divergence did not just randomly materialize out of thin air today. The ancient software running these two completely different cognitive operating systems was absolutely not written in modern times. To understand why your cellular structure demands a constant internal narrator while someone else processes reality in pure silence, we have to immediately leave this room. We must aggressively pull the camera back, rip through the drywall of your modern existence, and stare directly into the cold, unforgiving darkness of our evolutionary leap into abstract language. Let us completely shatter the microscopic lens, ripping the camera out of your complex neural pathways, tearing through the modern psychological textbooks, and aggressively rewinding the evolutionary clock by 100,000 years. Welcome to the brutal, transformative dawn of the cognitive revolution. Here, a terrifyingly profound mutation dictates the future of human existence in an environment stripped bare of abstract concepts. Our ancient ancestors invented a revolutionary external tool called language. It was a mechanism designed strictly to communicate physical threats across the hunting tribe. But watch carefully what happens next. A massive neurological divergence occurs. Some brains began to internalize this external tool. They took the loud, communal chatter of the tribe and folded it inward, creating an endless simulated radio broadcast inside the skull to practice complex social interactions. The loud mind was born. Other brains rejected this internal update. They retained the pristine, lightning-fast conceptual whiteboard of the primal hunter, processing highly complex survival data entirely without words. The silent mind remained intact. This monumental split is the majestic, deeply ingrained cognitive divergence etched permanently into the core of human DNA. Now, violently snap the pendulum back to the present moment. Look at the agonizing psychological reality of your daily existence. You are a biological organism carrying one of these two ancient operating systems, sitting completely safe in a climate-controlled room, being violently forced to conform to a society that fundamentally misunderstands both. The mismatch is an absolute evolutionary catastrophe. Modern civilization, with its endless talk therapy and obsessive journaling culture, heavily praises the internal radio station while completely ignoring its paralyzing lag in a crisis. Meanwhile, the educational system ruthlessly punishes the silent mind, mistaking its lightning-fast conceptual whiteboard for a terrifying lack of deep thought. You are a highly evolved creature, violently forced into a lifestyle of unbearable cognitive shame. Your brain is desperately screaming to operate natively, but all it gets is constant societal pressure to either silence the radio or force words onto an empty canvas. How could you possibly adapt to this psychological nightmare? You deeply believe you're a terrible, broken person for either overthinking every single spoken word or feeling absolutely nothing but silent concepts. But you are bringing a primitive, highly specialized brain to a hostile, standardized cage of modern expectations. You're not fighting your own intellect, you're fighting the crushing structural design of the 21st century that demands everyone process reality through the exact same linguistic filter. The heavy guilt you feel when you cannot verbally explain a brilliant silent intuition is not a sign of a defective character. It is the brilliant, desperate rebellion of a primal organism trying to artificially simulate the conceptual environment it was violently robbed of. You're completely innocent of this failure. The overwhelming confusion you feel every single day is not a personal weakness. It is the majestic, tragic crash of an ancient biological operating system buckling under the crushing, suffocating weight of an ignorant era it fundamentally cannot comprehend. You're carrying the heavy, unspoken burden of an entire lineage of diverse thinkers forced to live as homogenized machines without a single moment of authentic, native processing. But now, let the grand historical timeline slowly dissolve. Stop the ticking of the evolutionary clock. Silence the deafening roar of the cognitive revolution. Let the camera fall back down from the cold cosmos, descending quietly through the ceiling, returning to the absolute physical stillness of your mind. The history of human language has finally finished its defense. The evolutionary data has delivered its unshakable verdict. The science simply no longer matters in this quiet space. The crushing weight of societal expectations slowly fades away. Listen to the absolute stillness of your own consciousness. Notice the soft, rhythmic rise and fall of your chest as your lungs expand and collapse. You do not need to analyze your auditory cortex or track your linguistic delays anymore. You do not need to understand the vast, invisible evolutionary leaps that govern the processing speed of your genetic lineage. All of that immense, crushing structural noise ends right here, at the physical edge of your own awareness. For years, you have violently forced yourself to perform using a cognitive language that is not natively your own. You deeply believed that constantly forcing a silent mind to verbalize its profound depth, or desperately trying to permanently mute a brilliant, active internal narrator, was the ultimate mark of psychological maturity. You sincerely thought your native way of processing reality was a shameful sign that you were somehow fundamentally broken. Let that incredibly heavy, rusted armor of cognitive conformity fall to the floor right now. You're not a mechanical device built to process the chaotic data of the world through a single, standardized societal filter. You're just a fragile, beautiful biological organism that desperately needs the permission to think in its own native tongue. The relentless pursuit of cognitive homogenization is nothing but a cruel neurological illusion. You have the undeniable existential right to operate your internal world exactly as it was physically designed in this delicate moment of peace. If your mind is a loud running radio broadcast, you are finally free to step back and simply observe the endless stream of words without ever letting them paralyze your physical limbs. It is just a magnificent biological simulation, not a tyrant that controls your destiny. If your mind is a pristine, silent, conceptual whiteboard, you are finally free to completely trust your instant, wordless knowing without feeling the agonizing, exhausting need to instantly translate your profound intuition for an ignorant crowd. You are actively giving your brain the freedom it was violently robbed of by modern psychological standards. By quietly reclaiming this tiny fraction of cognitive sovereignty, you are not being difficult or stubborn. You are actively performing the most profound act of human preservation against a massive system meticulously designed to consume your authentic self. You are bravely choosing to let your own consciousness rest in a state of native clarity, bathed in the quiet dignity of simply being exactly who you are. Your innate intelligence, your deep emotional energy, and your inner peace are permanently restored, not by adding more complicated psychological filters, but by deeply honoring the profound healing architecture of your own specific mind. The biology has finally spoken, and the clear path to your existential liberation has been laid out in the quiet darkness of your own head. The heavy, invisible prison door of cognitive expectation is already standing wide open. The only remaining question is what you will quietly choose to do when the shadows fade and reality inevitably demands your attention again. Tomorrow, when you face a high-pressure crisis, will you surrender your fragile mind back to the crushing weight of a foreign operating system? Or will you fiercely protect the quiet sanctuary of your own beautifully native cognition? You have successfully reclaimed your cognitive operating system. The internal war is officially over. You are now ready to engage with the world using your completely authentic mind. But do not let this fragile cognitive peace blind you to a much more insidious biological leak happening in the background. As you achieve this pristine mental clarity and your life finally becomes stable and deeply happy, you will suddenly experience a horrifying psychological urge. You will look at the people you love, the friends who supported you, and you will feel a desperate, inexplicable need to completely vanish without a trace. Society calls this ghosting. This is absolutely not ingratitude. It is a severe structural flaw known as a social battery leak. You are standing at a profoundly critical crossroads. Will you bravely master your native cognitive language today? Or will you silently allow society to force you back into a paralyzing foreign operating system tomorrow? Leave your exact choice in the comments below. Write your definitive decision down to make it a binding physical contract with your own recovering nervous system. You have survived the internal monologue war. But the terrifying biological reason why your nervous system forces you to isolate yourself exactly when your life gets good, and the precise mechanical hack to patch this invisible social battery leak permanently, will be completely dismantled for you in the AXed video.